Shalom, shalom, and welcome to Yeshiva Pirkei Shoshanim in association with Nativ. My name is Davon Mays, and we have our co-host Tiho, and we will be dealing with the B'nai Noach Africa course. And today we will be dealing with man, and Tiho will be the one driving the class today, and you see he is sharing his screen, and we will let him take over. Shalom.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Dave. So today we'll be dealing with men, reward and punishment. It's a very interesting topic. And so it's just a build up on what we have already shared in the past. I think that 2 weeks ago we had a lesson on the concept of God. And so this week we are just going through man, reward and punishment, just to have a better understanding. What was the reason behind God creating the world and God creating man? And so we've got some very interesting things that we're going to learn in this lesson today. And our lesson starts with a very interesting question. It says, why did God create the world? You know, it's a question probably most people have asked themselves, but yeah, it's easy to ask this question, but the answer to this question is a bit perplexing and very difficult for a few reasons. And one of those reasons is we do not have exact knowledge of God's will, and we do not have access to to God's thoughts. We cannot therefore say to people, we know what God thinks and what was the thoughts of God prior to God creating the world. But the only thing that we can do is to learn about the purpose behind through his word. But we cannot therefore go in detail and say, prior to God creating the world, these were the thoughts in his heart, and this is the whole purpose why God created the world. We cannot. And therefore, I like the way they put it here. They say, to answer it, we have to presuppose an understanding of will and innermost thoughts before creation. If you studied the prior lessons on God carefully, then you will realize that this is impossible. So we as people, it's impossible for us to actually say we know the thoughts of God prior to creating the world, or to say we have understanding of God's exact will. It's impossible. And this actually points to the lesson that we had 2 weeks back on the concept of God. And now they say here, to further complicate things, consider that God is an absolute perfection without lack or needs. He didn't need to create us, therefore, his ultimate reason for doing so are unfathomable. If God is perfect, does not need us, there's nothing really that we bring to the table to say, okay, God, without us, with this, you can't do certain things. No. Literally, he doesn't need us at all. And therefore, if we've got this in the table, then why God brought us to this world and create all this beautiful world? And says here, any discussion of God's purpose is only possible from our perspective as the beneficiary of creation.
Yeah. Just real quick, I just wanted to share. We have, like you said, very, very limited knowledge on the situation. Isaiah 45, verse 18 tells us, "For this is what the Lord says: He who created the heavens, He is God. He who fashioned and made the earth, and He founded it. He did not create it to be empty, but formed it to be inhabited. He says, I am the Lord, and there is no other." So he made it.
It's Isaiah what?
45:18.
Yeah.
So it doesn't really tell us why he created the world, but it tells us he made it to be inhabited, to put people on it. So
Yep.
this is, again, it's limited knowledge, but as the beneficiary of it, we are deeply grateful that he made this decision.
Sure.
Right?
Sure.
So, you
Yeah.
know,
The
that's not an
only
explanation, it's just our understanding of why we are as the beneficiary, why we are appreciative that he did it is because that's why we're here. Why he did it, we really don't know.
yeah. Yes, and the only way we can have a glimpse of understanding is through his word, just to try to understand certain things. And so it says here the greatest act of love. So they are still trying to answer this question. And as they've already mentioned here, it is impossible for us to have an exact answer to this question, but we'll try to answer it through our perspective, and our perspective is informed by his word, the Torah. So it says, taking into consideration all that we cannot know, it informs us as to what we do know. If God is perfect and had no need to create us, then the act of creation must stand as the ultimate act of altruism. So let's check this word here. Altruism. So let's check it. It says disinterest and selfless concern for the well-being of others. It's a very powerful word. So it says here that some speak of creation as such, describing it as an act of love. The world is built on love, and that is Psalms 89 verse 3. The world is built on love. Number 2, we also get a verse that says, God saw all that he made, and behold, it was very good. So when we go through the week of creation in the book of Genesis, we find there in some days after God creates, he will say, it is good. It is good. And then ultimately he said, it is very good. So when you go and read Genesis chapter 1, verse 35, we find those powerful words. It was very good. And so because of this, we can therefore conclude that the world is built of love, and it also act of an ultimate goodness. It is also an act of ultimate goodness. As we have already stated that in the book of Genesis, we see God, while he's creating this world, he says he's good, and it's very good. So an ultimate goodness. Since God is perpetually creating all reality, it means that his goodness and love is constantly sustaining all creation. God is good to all, his love is upon all his works. So I am actually reminded of something that I read some months or weeks ago, and that is, they say God created the world through speech, through the word, let there be, and there was. And he imparted some of these traits to us, and one of them is this trait of speech. We are able to speak. God gave us this as a gift to us. And also, we have to be very careful of what we say, because our words are powerful. We have to be very, very careful. But as the words are, as we speak, and when we stop speaking, whatever that we're saying comes to an end. So they say for God to sustain the world, he continually sustains this world through the word. So he spoke, but the words that he spoke when he created still sustains the world even today. The world is not just there alone without God. He still sustains his creation even today. And he sustains his creation through the word.
That's one of the reasons that it tells us how powerful his word is. In Psalm 119:89, it tells us, "Forever, O Lord, your word is settled in heaven." To be settled means, it's not going anywhere. It's
Sure.
firm. It's constantly standing. When he spoke the creation into existence, it never stopped, and so to speak, and this is one of those things that we really don't understand how it works, because we don't hear him speak. We weren't there. We don't know how powerful that, if you want to call it a voice in our understanding, what that even means. But we do know that everything, scientifically speaking, everything in the creation has a vibration to it. And we know voices create vibrations. And this is how we hear, the sounds have power behind them. And that constant vibration is almost like an echo of the continuing power. You hit a bell and it rings. Well, when he
Sure.
spoke, it created something that's constantly vibrating and sustaining itself, and that's pretty much our simple understanding of what it means when he says his word is settled in heaven. And in Psalm 33:6, it says, "By the word of the Lord the heavens were made, and all the host of them by the breath of his mouth." So we see constantly in the Tanakh, it's the prophets tell us it's his word and his mouth. He spoke the creation into existence, like was just explained, and it's just a powerful understanding of who we're dealing with, which we really don't know.
Yep. Thank you. It says partaking of true good. You let me know the path of life. In your presence is the fullness of joy. In your right hand is the eternal bliss. I am the Lord your God who instruct you for your own reward. So this is very interesting, but let's hear what we have here. It says here, this first verse tells us that God is an ultimate goodness. And the second verse tells us that both that man is capable of partaking of that ultimate goodness, and that God instructs us as to how we should do so. The second verse tells us both that man is capable of partaking of that ultimate goodness, and that God instructs us as to how we should do so. So on top, we've already established that the world is created with love, and God imparted goodness into it. And as we said, every time when he created, says it's good, and then he said it's very good. But for us to, in order to partake in this goodness, he needs to instruct and direct us into his goodness. And so now the book of Isaiah here says, I am the Lord your God who instructs you for your own reward. We do not know how to direct ourselves to God's goodness. He needs to direct us to his goodness. And therefore, when it says here, I'm the Lord your God who instructs you for your own reward, we benefit from being instructed by God, being told by God what to do, what to say, how to live our lives. In so doing, we then partake in the goodness that he has imparted into this world.
Very, very powerful. Genesis 15:1. After these things, the word of the Lord came to Abram in a vision, saying, "Do not be afraid, Abram. I am your shield, your exceedingly great reward." So we see one of the first things Abraham learns is you're not doing this just because I'm telling you to do it. Of
Mhm.
course, it's a great thing for God to even speak to you and have you do things, but I'm going to reward you for your efforts. So this is not, in vain. I have something
Mm.
for you when you
Yes.
listen to me, just like you tell kids, do all these things and afterwards you get some candy or something. They're going to be excited like, oh yeah, we're going to do
Mm.
that. Dad's going to take us to the store. So we're in the same boat. We are definitely on the receiving end. Already the fact that we get to exist, but on top of that, he will reward us for obeying his instructions, which are for our good, because he's perfect. He doesn't need
Yes.
what we're going to, you know, do as something that's going to keep him, in business. He's perfect without us, and everything that we do is really for our benefit. Even things we give back to him. King David says, "Everything I give you, you already gave to me." So I'm pretty much giving you
Mm.
your own things back. All these sacrifices I'm giving, like you gave me a mouth to speak to you, like I'm just giving you back what you already gave me. So, the incentive to listen is like, why wouldn't I listen to my creator?
Mm. Powerful. However, in order to be aware of divine goodness, we must know its absence. This is another reason for Tzimtzum, the restriction of God's presence in the physical creation. Tzimtzum it's a Hebrew term, and they explain it there as a restriction of God's presence in the physical creation. By reducing the everyday imminent experience of God, true experiences of his goodness can be fully recognized. I don't know if Dave, you have got anything to say on this?
Yes, it's one of the situations of, and I'm gonna go in a little different direction. When we don't listen to God, there is a concept of him hiding his face from us. This is Deuteronomy 31 and 17. It says, "Then my anger shall be aroused against them in that day, and I will forsake them, and I will hide my face from them, and they shall be devoured, and many evils and troubles shall befall them, so that they will say in that day, have not these evil come upon us, because our God is not among us." So the fact that we can't detect God with our six senses or five senses, even though we really have six senses, but with our immediate five senses, is not a demonstration of he's not there,
Mm.
because the fact that he removed himself in order to create this space to create us, it's
Yes.
which is explained in the first lesson we dealt with God. So when he says he's hiding his face from us, he's still there. Just the it's like when the sun, you notice a difference when there's no sunlight. It gets cold,
Mm.
right?
Yes.
When the sun's out, it feels good, it's shining, food grows, the sun produces all these things that benefit the world. But if the sun was to go away, we see it gets dark, and it's cold and gloomy, and it's not a pleasant thing at times. So when he removes his face or his presence from us on a spiritual level, we can detect something is wrong. And I think the fact that we can't detect God just by looking outside or seeing him or hearing him or things like that doesn't mean he's not there, because right now with technology we have Wi-Fi signals going all over the places while our devices
Mm.
work. We can't see, hear, smell, or taste them, but we know they're there because we wouldn't be on
That
this Zoom
sure.
call right now. So for people to think, well, I don't see God, you can't prove he's there, it's kind of ridiculous. You don't see your brain either, but I know it's in your head, you know?
Sure.
So if that's the logic, then we really gotta, think about how we even look at the world. If we're gonna use
Mm.
things to try to prove something, we gotta, use that same energy across the board. So when it says God restricts his presence, this is part of free will. If we looked up in the sky and saw God, that awesomeness, for one, we wouldn't be able to take it in. But who would make a sin in front of God if he was standing right there?
No
Nobody.
one.
That would eliminate the free will, which would eliminate the whole concept of reward and punishment, because
Yep,
nobody's ever going to dare to sin. So there
sure.
can't be a reward if I'm too terrified to do it. Now, we should have that same fear without even seeing him, but just the fact that he removes himself to allow for the test to take place is
Yeah,
just shows you that, he's this is an understatement, of course, but he's much smarter than us, to where he set this up for our benefit. So just by listening to him, just like a parent tells his children things, and the children don't always trust their parents, but we have to be, in the right mindset to say, you know what, he doesn't need us. Why wouldn't I listen to him when everything he does is for my benefit anyway? The sun
Mhm.
out because for us, he doesn't
For
need the
us.
sunshine. So
Yeah.
maybe I should, listen to him when he tells me, to do things for my own good, because he's always done everything to begin with for our own good.
Wow, wow, wow. This is powerful. Actually, it goes back to the story of Genesis, right? So man was created on the sixth day. And so God making sure things are ready for men, right? You can't create man where there's no dry land, vegetation and everything, preparing all these things. And eventually he creates man on the sixth day. And he's doing all these things for us. And then, as we said in the book of Isaiah, it says, I'm the Lord your God who instructs you for your own reward. He has already proven to us that everything that he does is for our own good. And therefore, we might not know how to get to his goodness by our own intellect. And so he says, I instruct you, I'm going to point you to the right place where you can embark into this goodness. And so maybe just to maybe summarize the first part where we're trying to explain why God created the world. So we have already established that it is impossible for us to have a ultimate answer to explain why God created the world and why God created man. But by just perusing through his Torah, we can get some glimpse of why he created us. And reason number one that we established is he created the world with love. And number two, he then created it with goodness. We have also established that God, he is perfect, and therefore he does not need us. There is nothing that is lacking to say, I need these people. Without them, I cannot do certain things. He is perfect God. He doesn't need us, but he created us to show his love. And from beginning of time, we have seen that everything that he does, he's doing it for our own good. So this is, that's the first part. Let's get to free will. I think Dave has already touched on it a bit. And so here's the verse here. It says, it's actually Deuteronomy chapter 30, verse 19. It says, I call heaven and earth to witness against you this day. I have put before you life and death, blessing and curse. And listen to what follows. It says, choose life. I've put all these things in front of you, but please choose life. And so they say here, this verse alludes to man's free will, his ability to choose whether to partake of God's goodness or to turn away from it. And so I was thinking earlier today, we see that God gave us free will, freedom of choice. It's a very big thing. In fact, they say here, it says here, beside God, man is the only being who can act upon his free will. Only man beside God. So this is a very powerful attribute that God shared with us, right? And so I was just thinking, in order for free will to to be there, what do we need? Number one, we need two opposing thoughts. You can't just have good. You need evil to be there. Number two, as you have already said, Dave, if the presence of God can be felt everywhere, it becomes now, it actually crushes the free will. You can't have free will when you can perceive God right there where you are sitting. And therefore, for free will to survive, God has to hide himself within his creation. And so, as we have read in the previous lesson, that there's this book that says, good is usually explained as the presence of God, but evil is not his absence, but his hiddenness. He's hidden within his creation. God is everywhere. We should not forget that. But he hides himself in order for free will to survive. In order for people to be able to show their free will, he has to withdraw himself. I'm going to read this part here. It says, in order to create a condition for this type of choice, by the way, I'm reading from, I don't know if you can see this one, is Bereshit. It's the commentary on the book of Genesis, but it's, in order to create a condition of this type of choice, God created a world where his presence would be obscured enough to enable men not to see it, if he so choose. He subjected his all-pervasive holiness to limitation upon limitation, as layer after layer of material existence built upon disguise and cancel his presence. I'm going to read this part as well. It says here, it says, God's name is hidden. His every presence is hidden within the universe he created. This increasing extent of hiddenness had to continue until it reaches the right state, the state at which men could be deceived into thinking that there is no God, save for his dictates of his senses and his lust for power and license, but also the state at which the sincere seeking man could find God's presence on earth and in every aspect of life. So I like this thing. It says here, let me just repeat this part. It says, the state at which men could be deceived into thinking there's no God. So he has hidden himself to a point where we can be deceived in thinking there's no God. But it says, he didn't hide himself so far that even if you sincerely seek God, you will not find him. If you seek for him, you'll find him, but he hid himself enough that you might even think there's no God.
Powerful.
So that
Powerful.
is in order for free will to survive or strive.
There's a verse in Proverbs that kind of describes what you just mentioned. Proverbs 25:2 says, it is the glory of God to conceal or hide a matter, but the glory of kings is to search out a matter. So when you discover things, it's very, for us, it's like finding a treasure. Somebody hid it on purpose, and then when you find it, it's like, oh my God, I found this treasure. Well, that's like finding God in the creation. When you search for him and you find him, or he reveals himself to you in a manner that just blows your mind, that is the goal, you know, and that's what opens your eyes to, you know, the creation itself, to where yes, we can look outside and see a sun, the moon, the stars, and all this beautiful life around us, the plants and the trees and the animals and everything, even people, babies being born. But for some reason, that doesn't strike a chord with a lot of people. It's like, oh, we're so used to it, the miracle is gone, right? Because those are all
Mhm.
miracles. But by studying the Torah, and you just realize, wow, God really did do this. To the
So,
average person, it's like, oh yeah, the sun, yeah, there's a big ball of fire in the sky and it doesn't fall out of the
mm,
sky. To them, that's just science. But when you
yeah,
actually understand who God is with our limited understanding, to me, that's
wow.
like, how does he do that? You know,
Yeah,
how does my heart beat? I mean, you can be driving the car and thinking and listening to music and having a conversation all at the same time. Like, who creates something like we're like the most dynamic creation, you know what I mean? Like, if you found a robot, you would be amazed at the things the robot can do. But every time we see a robot, it's based on us.
yes,
So if somebody
exactly.
created this robot, who created us? You know what I mean? So it's just
Wow.
powerful how he gives us the mindset of having to search for him when we can obviously look and see something created this world. But in our mind, oh, it's just normal, right? We
Mm,
downplay it.
mm,
So
yeah, yeah. So that's very powerful. And so, as we have already said on top, that God created this world with goodness. And so they say here, if man had no free will, then the enjoyment of God's goodness will not be true enjoyment. Why? It will be compulsory road experience devoid of creator meaning. I mean, if if that is the only thing that you can only enjoy the goodness, there's no other way of saying I can choose not, I can, there's no way I can choose opposite of God's goodness, then there's no free will there. So God gives us a free will so that in order we can choose the opposite of his goodness.
I think we lost Tiho. He went mute and his screen went dark. To pick up where he was going, it says, if a man if man had no free will, the enjoyment of God's goodness would not be true enjoyment. It would be compulsory, road experience devoid of greater meaning. Once he has the ability to desire and choose God's goodness, only
Yeah.
then does the experience become valuable. Okay, Tio's back. Go ahead, bro.
Yes, sorry, yes. And so as yes. So this goodness of God can only be um, enjoyed when there is another opposing thought. If we have got God's goodness and we have got something else, if you choose that, then you need to exercise your free will in order to choose God's goodness. And that God's goodness that becomes even more greater, and it has got a meaning because it's not something that was compulsory. Once he has the ability to desire and choose God's goodness, only then does the experience becomes valuable. You chose God's goodness. It was not compelled. It was not forced into you.
You're not a
So you
robot.
decided, yes, you are not a robot. You decided that I am going to choose this. Therefore, God created man with free will. Beside God, man is the only being who can act upon his free choice. In this sense, man resembles God. This is the fundamental understanding of man having been created in the image of God. So yeah, so it's very powerful as well. I think we have spoke about it in the previous lessons, and that is the attributes of God. And these attributes of God, he decided to share certain attributes with us. And even though they are not, we cannot, for example, the attribute of love, we cannot love like God, but he has shared that with us. We are able to love. And he also shared with us the attribute of being able being able to talk, and other attributes that we find here, the attribute of free choice. He gave us that. So it's a very powerful attribute that he shared with us there.
You said something, the key word is share. And I think a lot of people confuse the creation of God needing us opposed to God wanting to share with us. For instance, we know that in the Tanakh, God uses people or prophets to carry out certain things. For instance, he used Moses to bring Israel out of Egypt. So did he need Moses? No, but he allowed Moses to share in the redemption of Israel. He allows us to share in creation by having children. He allows us to share in making the world a better place by building bridges and things to, make farming. He told Adam to cultivate the garden. Did God need Adam to cultivate the garden after he created the earth? No, but he allowed him to share because we get satisfaction when we do that, because when we choose, like you said, when we choose to help and we see the outcome of, wow, look at this garden that I helped basically God make. He gave me the seeds, he gave me the sun and the rain and everything to participate. I moved some dirt around and planted a couple things and pulled some weeds out. Now I got this beautiful garden that sustains me and gives me food. I was able to share in the creation at that point, but he didn't need me to do it. He allowed me to help.
To be part of this.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's very powerful. I think there's another thing that comes to my mind, and that is God created the world not perfect, and not because he couldn't. He decided that he's going to limit himself when coming to creating the world. He could have created the world perfect, but he chose not to create it perfect in order to invite man to be part of perfecting the world. So we are invited, come. I'm not going to make it perfect. I want you to play part in perfecting the world. And therefore our role really is to make this world a better place and perfect it. He could have done without us, but he just wants us to be part of this whole process.
Yeah, when you participate, when you let kids help, they're so happy that they even they didn't really even do nothing, right? You cut the grass and you're taking out the grass and take to the garbage, and they get to help carry the bag. They're so happy. And sometimes they let me do it. They get mad when you don't let them do it all the way, right? So when you let them help, they just love it. So that's us. We get to help in the creation.
Sure. Amazing. Let's continue here. It says free will, however, requires both an internal and external mechanism in order to function. So some two interesting concepts here. We've got, internal aspects, and that is Yetzer Hatov and Yetzer Hara. The inclination to do good and inclination to do evil. So God put these two forces within us. And this is only to make sure that free will can survive. Without Yetzer Hatov and Yetzer Hara, you can't have a free will. If you only have a Yetzer Hatov, or desire to do good only, then there's no free will there. Adam, they needed to have the tree of life and the tree of knowledge of good and evil. Having that now gives them the freedom of choice. You can't exercise freedom of choice where there is only one choice. That is not freedom of choice. So for us to all, we make thousands and thousands of decisions every day. Some of them we don't even seem like we don't really think whether to sit down or stand. But there are those decisions that we make that are very important. And therefore, when it comes to those decisions, Yetzer Hatov presents its own case and say, please choose me here. And Yetzer Hara comes and say, no, I think I'm better here, you know? And your duty is to choose. Always follow Yetzer Hatov. I've placed in your hands life and death, good and evil. Please choose life. So God has put within us all these desires within us, and we have to train ourselves to a point where it becomes our second nature to always go with the good desires. And, you know, I appreciate these teachings. Before, when I was a Christian, I used to pray that temptations could be removed completely. Like, I don't want temptation. Not understanding how important what part it plays in my life. So praying that Yetzer Hara to be removed, you don't know what you are praying for. You are literally praying that there should be no free will. So you need Yetzer Hatov, because for you to be a better person, you need Yetzer Hara to come and keep on challenging you. By you being able to go beyond it, you become a better person.
That's powerful.
You become a better person. So without Yetzer Hara, you can't be a better person.
That's
No way.
I like the way you put that, because without competition, you cannot be a champion.
Yes, you can't.
You have to have an opposing force, right? If there's nobody to challenge you, then you can't, you can't grow. Your muscles are not going to get stronger if there's no resistance.
Exactly.
So that's just it's just not going to happen.
How it works.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And here's another thing. This teaching of Yetzer Hatov and Yetzer Hara crashes many Christian teachings, and that one of them is Hasatan rebelled against God, and he's the one that comes with these temptations. So then what they are trying to say is, if Satan never rebelled, as they put it, that he rebelled, there will have never been a temptations like Yetzer Hara would have never been there. And that is lack of understanding on how important are these things. If you don't grow, if you don't have temptation, you can't grow. Actually, the Jews teach that a man can actually be more, how can I put it? Can I say more holier than angels if he keeps on doing good? Because angels are stagnant, right? They are created this way. They cannot go, they cannot grow, because they don't have freedom of choice. They are created as holy beings, and the level of holiness that angel had 10 years ago are still exactly the same. They don't grow in holiness. Only men can grow in holiness by keeping mitzvot. Because you are here today, tomorrow you are there. You keep on growing because we have got freedom of choice and Yetzer Hara and Yetzer Hatov.
Yes, this is true. And this is why we were given the Torah, and this is why Moses won the argument of why he was allowed to bring the Torah down, because the angels did not need it.
Exactly.
Angels did not need the Torah. So yeah, he had to actually win an argument of why we need the Torah, and they don't. Exactly.
Sure.
Great point.
Yeah. This dual nature of man explains the apparent contradiction between these two. And God created man in his image. In him, image of God, he created him. And the desires of man's heart is evil from his youth. So they say here, the first verse refers to man's divine potential, the Yetzer Hatov, the desire for good. The second refers to man's base desires, his Yetzer Hara, the desires for evil. In the Talmud Talmud, Rabbi Nachman bar Rav Chisda sees an allusion to both aspects. This year, Rabbi Nachman points out that a word, I'm not sure without vowels here how to read this one here. It's expelled with extra yod. He sees the two yod in the word as an allusion to God's having formed man with two desires. Also, the word yotzer, meaning formed or fashioned, is cognate of the word yetzer, desire. In Torah thought, all of men's actions and choices are the results of the struggle between these two inclinations. One seeks the holy, the other profane. One desires knowledge, the other wants only physical pleasure. It says here, one might think that the goal of man is to entirely ignore his evil desire. This is not so. The ideal for man is to subdue his bad desire to his good desire, thus making it a tool of divine service.
Just like anything in this world, you can use something for good or for evil. You can use a shovel to dig some dirt. You can use a shovel to hurt somebody. You know, you can use a gun to protect yourself. You use a gun to hurt somebody. You can use money for a bribe to cover over a sin, or you can use money, you know, to give for charity. So it is important to be able to make those decisions with every tool in front of you, and you know, those that will determine how you look at the world, is how you use your tools. You know, and this is all part of free will. Without making those good decisions, you know, you it's basically the decision you make, the outcome will determine, you know, where your source was. Was you being greedy or stingy, or was you looking out for somebody? And it's how you use your tools.
In order for man to have free will, he must be placed in an environment that allows him to exercise his power of choice. As you have already said, God had to withdraw himself or hide himself from his creation. Within his creation, he hides himself in order to create an environment that is conducive for free will. Therefore, God created a world filled with opportunities for both good and evil, in which all things speak to his ultimate purpose. For me, this was powerful because I keep on thinking of where I come from. This to me is like very serious problem for Christianity, because I mean, how can you say someone has got free will, but you say God only presented only the good side? So which means God is desperate for Satan to exist, even though he rebelled. But we come here, we know that no, Satan rebelled. God created Satan exactly the way he is, to be an opponent.
There's another point that's interesting, because we know in Christian thought, original sin means we inherited the sins of Adam and Eve. The problem with that concept is, for one, to say that nobody can ever be righteous. Well, they must then read Genesis, where it says Noah was righteous and was saved from a flood. Noah should have never been able to be righteous to be saved from a flood if he inherited original sin. And if Adam and Eve were created directly, or Adam specifically was created directly by God, who did he inherit sin from to make a decision that rebelled against God? Now you're saying God gave him sin? Because he didn't have a parent to inherit it from, but he still, as a perfect person, did not listen.
Yeah, I never saw it that way.
You see, so it doesn't even make sense when you really get back to the original case for it. Adam didn't inherit it, but he still, as a perfect person, was able to have free choice and make a bad decision. So that doesn't work.
Oh, thank you for that. I say here, it says here, God has made everything for his own purpose, even the wicked. You see, these are the verses that I used to read when I was a Christian and run. What is this verse saying? You know, and Isaiah chapter 45, verse 7. These were like, oh, these were problematic for me. I form light and I create darkness. I make peace and I create evil. I am God. I do all these things. I'm like, to be honest, I remember the first time I came across this verse is when one guy who was in prison, who was actually very angry with God, he says, God create evil. And I was there saying, no. There's not even one evil that comes from God. Nothing. It's all the works of Satan, you know? And then he comes and pulls this verse. I don't know, I read this verse 3 times. I think I was like, how do I answer this guy now with this verse? You know, the only thing that I could say was, let me come back to you. And I never came back. Because for many years, I could not answer this verse. And I just decided, you know, I'm just going to forget about it, put it at the back of my mind, and that's it. And now I am looking through the perspective of Jews, and now all this verse makes sense. I don't have to run away from anything.
There's a verse in Lamentations. Let me get to it. Lamentations chapter 3.
Let me see. Lamentations chapter 3.
I want to say verse 30. Verse 38.
38.
So depending on the translation, there's different translations on it. So I'm going to read it in a few different translations.
Yeah.
In the King James Version says, out of the mouth of the Most High proceeded not evil and good. It's kind of posed out as a question. Another translation says, in the Christian Standard Bible says, do not both adversity and good come from the mouth of the Most High? The complete Jewish Bible says, don't both bad things and good proceed from the mouth of the Most High? So basically, we know that God, nothing happens without his permission.
Nothing.
It can't happen without his permission. And so it says, the next verse even says, so why should a living man complain a man for the punishment of his sins? So if something happened to you, you really need to think about why it happened, because God allowed it to happen. If he didn't want it to happen, it wouldn't have happened to you. We don't always understand, but at the same time, if he creates good and evil, he knew what was coming to you, you know. And a lot of times it says also in Job 36, he punishes us to open up our eyes so that we will repent. And if we don't repent, then we're going to get the full wrath. And if we do repent, then of course he forgives us, and you know, things will get better. But this all goes back to freedom of choice, though. So even in the punishment, he still gives us a way out to say, look, I'm putting the pressure on you here. What are you gonna do? Oh, you still not getting the point? Okay, then I'm gonna proceed. So you know, it can always get better or worse depending on your choice. So it goes back to free will.
Yeah, no, I like that. I'm trying to remember this. It says your actions leads to what? Eventually, I need to say it leads to your character building. I'm just trying to remember the stages that they have there, that you have got your actions and they become your habits. Yeah. So you've got your actions and your action becomes your habits. and your habit becomes your character.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
what if you then make your actions are always bad, or you are following Yetzer Hara, evil inclinations, eventually you will form habits that are bad. And if your habits are bad, your character will be bad. And so how God works is he puts pressure in order to change your actions so that your habit can change and eventually your character changes as well.
I like that. I like that.
So let's see. In this environment, any and every decision a person makes is the direct result of nonsense struggle between these opposite inclinations. How man decides to use or pervert the opportunities God offers is man's choice alone, and one for which he bears 100% of responsibility. If man sins, he bears full responsibility for his actions. So that would be Leviticus chapter 5, verse 17. Since the potential for evil resides within man and is evenly matched with his capacity for good, the Torah rejects any concept of an all evil being or devil who tempts people into. To iterate, people are 100% responsible for their own sins.
Real quick, that last sentence, people are 100% responsible for their own sins. Ezekiel 18, verse 20.
Okay.
The
Yeah.
soul who sins shall die. The son shall not bear the guilt of the father, nor the father bear the guilt of the son. The righteousness of the righteous shall be upon himself, and the wickedness of the wicked shall be upon himself. But if a wicked man turns from all his sins which he has committed, keeps all my statutes, and does what is lawful and right, he shall surely live, he shall not die. None of the transgressions which he has committed shall be remembered against him. Because of the righteousness he has done, he shall live. Do I have any pleasure at all that the wicked should die, says the Lord God, and not that he should turn from his evil way and live? It's 100% in your hands.
And just to support what we're saying, read verse 27 and 28 there.
Again, when a wicked man turns away from the wickedness which he committed and does what is lawful and right, he preserves himself alive. That's the responsibility. That's the choice, right? Because he considers, he thinks, what am I doing? Because he considers and turns away from the transgressions which he committed, he shall surely live and shall not die. So when you think about what you're doing, even if you made a sin, you can stop. And that's the whole thing. Repent, stop what you're doing. You know, if there's a sign that says don't go in the water, there's alligators, and you walk over to the water and you see those alligators, you still got a choice not to go in that water. You didn't already transgressed by passing the sign. It said stop, but you kept going. And then when you see that gator, you still got a choice to turn away. But then if you proceed into the water, it's 100% in your hands that you got ate. God didn't want that. He said, turn, literally turn around. Right? But a lot of people like to go into the water with the crocodiles.
Yes, and lose some few arms and legs, and like, oh, okay, now I know.
You know. Oh man.
Okay, now we are on the last part, and that is reward and punishment. So we just dealt with the free will. The first one was we are trying to understand why God created the world and why God brought men to this world. And now we are concluding with reward and punishment. It says here, we tend to think that we are rewarded for our good deeds and punished for our transgressions. This view is true only of laws created and administered by men. Spiritual reward and punishment operate according to a different mechanic. Just as God created the natural world with its own principles of cause and effect, he did the same with the spiritual world. Within this system, reward and punishment are direct results of one's actions rather than things meted out for one's action. I don't know if you have got anything to add there, or can we continue?
Well, the direct results is basically, did you listen or did you not listen? Just like what I was just bringing up. Don't go in the water, there's consequences. You didn't go in the water, you don't get ate by the crocodiles. Obey my Torah, choose life and good. If Deuteronomy 18 or Deuteronomy 28, there's blessings and curses. If you listen to me, I will bless you. I will provide you with food and rain and sustenance, and you'll have a happy life. You will have healthy babies born. The women won't miscarriage. If you don't listen, you're gonna have all these problems. You're gonna go into captivity. You're gonna have nations invading you. Just like with our kid, you go to school, listen to the teacher. You're gonna get a good education. You don't listen, you're gonna come home. You're gonna get punished. You don't do your homework. You're not gonna learn a subject. You're gonna fail a test. It just is reward and punishment is in every aspect of our lives.
Sure. It says here, I think it just adds on what we've already discussed on the Ezekiel. It says, a wicked man's sins shall entrap him. He will be bound in the binds of his own transgression. God is known by the judgment he carries out when the wicked man is ensnared in the work of his own hands. He who digs a pit shall fall into it. You dig a pit with your own actions. I always say to people, if you take a remote and you switch on the TV, you can decide to watch something that is not right, knowing very well that this is not right. And by so doing, you are digging your own pit. Because now, after doing that, you're just going to fall into that. So the way for you not to dig, this is not right. Do not even switch that TV. Do not go to that whatever and find yourself digging your own pit. Just don't do it. Because, they say there's a difference between knowing with your senses and knowing with your heart. You can know that something is wrong, but if your senses, you don't teach your senses to stop, then you'll always find yourself doing exactly what is wrong. You know with your heart, but not with your senses, not with your hands and with your eyes, and you will always fall into the same thing. Your heart knows this is wrong, but your eyes keeps on watching it. You know this is wrong, but your ears keeps on listening to it, because you only know with your heart, not with your senses.
Yeah. The wicked man is ensnared in the work of his own hands. We see free choice everywhere. Yeah. Decisions.
These two verses make clear that God's justice is programmed into the spiritual law of the universe and operates as a direct result of one's own actions. God has already put it there. I mean, we've got spiritual laws. We've got also physical laws. And for example, there are things that God has already put them there, that if you put your hands on top of the stove, you'll burn. You feel pain, And so there's nothing like maybe after you put your hand on top of the stove, God will still have to decide whether you burn or you don't burn. It's already known. If the stove is hot, you put your hand there, you burn.
Period.
And so certain things you must know that, okay, if I do this, consequences of my actions are coming.
Yep. You can't stare into the sun. You
Yeah.
turn the light off, it's going to be dark. Like everything is a cause and effect. Like, and
Yes.
you
By
have
the
to
way,
realize, I'm sorry.
yes, Dave, I see that I've got about 3% on my battery here. I don't have
Okay.
electricity as I said, so when it switch off, you can just maybe finish up, but we're almost done, I see.
Okay, I got you.
Yeah, sure. Then it says here, the same applies to reward. However, there is a difference. While punishment is precisely meted out, reward is given liberally. Furthermore, the ultimate reward for good lasts for eternity, while punishment for evil is only temporary. This is very powerful as well. Because nature of reward and punishment differ, good deeds cannot cancel out evil, and vice versa. This is learned from the verse in the Torah. So maybe let's quickly rush there. This part says, what does it mean that God does not take bribe? Our sage explained that God does not take the exchange of good deeds for evil one. An individual is punished for all the evil he does and rewarded for all of the good. Here's the thing. However, the punishment that one deserves for his transgression can be changed into merit of a mitzvah by sincere, loving repentance. This is very powerful. If you change your ways, now your transgressions can be changed into the merit of mitzvah.
So
Only
God
if
changes his verdict.
Yes, if your repentance is if your repentance is true, you are not just doing it, then it can be changed. As we will see in our future lesson next week or so, the primary place for reward and punishment is Olam Haba, the world to come. Nevertheless, under certain circumstances, a person can receive reward and punishment for part of his deeds in this world. We will discuss this more in the future lesson. Maybe let me go to Psalm 92 here, verse, I think it's 7 and 8. It says here, a brutish man cannot know, a fool cannot understand this. Though the wicked sprout like grass, though all evildoers blossom, it is only that they may be destroyed forever. So what it says here is, you'll be shocked that to see the wicked people striving and seem to be getting all things right, but God is giving, it says here, only they will be destroyed forever. So I've read where they say, God will destroy the souls of these evil people, but because God is a just God, he gives them their rewards for this little good deeds that they've done on this earth. So he blesses them and say, you are out, here's your check, complete, you are out, because you will not see the world to come. Or after this, you are done. But those who follow God, there are rewards that you get, but the ultimate reward is the world. The ultimate reward is in the world to come. That is the ultimate reward.
Real quick, Deuteronomy 7. He repays those who hate him to their face to destroy them. He will not be slack with them who hates him. He will repay them to their face. Therefore, you shall keep the commandment and the statutes and the judgments which I command you today to observe them. So when he says he pays you to your face, that's exactly what you just said. In this world, I'm gonna give you what you deserve, but that's it.
That's it. You're done. So what verse is that? It's chapter 7.
Deuteronomy 7, verse 9 through 10.
9 to 10, yeah. Yeah, so these are very powerful lessons, and I think we we will continue next week. I think we have covered the most important parts of this lesson. And so any closing remarks, Dave?
No, but I will say you did an excellent job of breaking this down. I appreciate you doing this with me. We
Yeah.
will continue next week, and if anybody has any further questions or want to see this actual lesson, you can go to the native.org and check it out. Sign up for the classes. Yeshiva Pirkei Shoshanim. You can find the lessons, the Noahide course, or you can go to the Nativ website, sign up, and you'll get all the information for this. And we will see you guys next week. Shalom.
Shalom. Thank you.